Court victories, like the one siding with our Marines this last Friday, are important. It should serve as a reminder to both elected officials and bureaucrats that in our country, the government may not violate the rights, in this case specifically, the religious liberties of its citizens as enumerated in the Constitution. Our military personnel are not the only ones who have had their rights infringed by COVID crackdowns. It's happened to people all across the country. Government officials aren't the only guilty parties, though, in abusing those rights, although, more often than not, meddling and influence from government has resulted in those violations. During the last 24-plus months of flattening the curve, many private businesses, charities, and ministries have enforced similar policies. More often than not, they did it under the duress of lawmakers who used the crisis as a power grab. Politicians and their proxied bureaucrats threatened rescinding government contracts with groups who would not comply with COVID rules requiring vaccinations. Now, in addition to the military lawsuits, government-controlled entities like hospitals and schools have been losing and settling cases filed by employees who lost their jobs because these vaccines violated their conscience. There is a simple lesson to be learned here. If the existence of your company, charity, or ministry is so dependent on revenue from the government that you can't afford to walk away, there's a principle in Proverbs 22:7 you might want to recall. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is the slave to the lender. As long as you are dependent on them for their money, they own you. Governments are supposed to answer to the electorate, not control them. As more parties seek income from the government, those in authority will maintain more control than our founders ever intended. The founders never meant for government to pick or fund winners and losers in business, industry, or charity. Think of it this way. If the government can afford to give money back to you, then they have confiscated too much from you that could have been earning interest on your investments. If they are taking your money and using it to fund businesses, industry, or charities, then they are choosing for you which businesses, industries, and charities should succeed with your support, but you get no satisfaction from participating in that choice. This degrades our free markets, creating an imbalanced competition. But then, to help ensure they keep receiving income from the public dole, so many of these groups turn around and pour millions of dollars into political campaigns to elect people who will continue funding their business, industry, or charity. A case in point, Planned Parenthood receives over $600 million annually in taxpayer funding. They announced last week that they have committed $50 million to the midterm elections this November. I've heard too many people, especially in charitable and ministry work, justify their government contracts by claiming that they can do so much more good because they have this money. But over the years, little by little, they have sacrificed elements of their mission due to the strings attached to the government income. For example, I knew of a shelter for abused women run by a Christian ministry. Because this shelter was funded in part by government grants, they were not permitted to share their Christian faith in the shelter. This may lead to your ultimate downfall. You can follow God or you can follow the money, but you can't pursue both.